Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Well, it's certainly my pleasure to introduce Dave Thomas to the Word Balloon audience. I imagine a good portion of us are well aware of Dave's comedy career, but it's really exciting to join him now as he's writing his first novel, The Many Lives of Jimmy Layton, with Max Allan Collins. I've talked to Max briefly about it. Look forward to a new conversation, but really excited to talk to you today about this, Dave.
Yeah, well, thanks. Good to be here with you, and I'm happy to chat.
So, truly, I really love how in the last few years, you keep challenging yourself going as a writer to different mediums or even different styles of writing. I mean, I know hearing you on other interviews that you've been doing a lot of television writing in dramatic shows like Bones and The Blacklist.
Well, it's not as courageous as you're making it out to be. The fact of the matter is, I fled from comedy into drama. And the reason I did was because comedy changed. Comedy became this sort of very difficult, narrow corridor where there were groups on either side just looking at their phones, waiting to be offended, and then pouncing on you and Twitter bombing you. And I have a lot of friends who are stand-ups, and they were like canceling college shows and running into problems and getting booed for just good, for jokes. Give me a break for jokes. And I have another friend who's a professor at NYU and mathematics department. And he said, the entire university environment has changed. Instead of being a place where you go to have your ideas and preconceived notions challenged, it is now required to be a safe place where people can't even tolerate what they call a microaggression. And it's just like, give me a break, you know? If you can't be challenged to hear new ideas and engage in meaningful and fair dialogue about those ideas, where can you? It's just, it's gone way too far. In the sort of balance in America where it sort of goes this way a little too far, like McCarthyism, and then comes way, way back. It's tilting way, way back too far in the other way now, and it's got to change.
I'm making that same pendulum movement when I talk about the subject as well. Couldn't agree with you more. And before we get into the book, are the dramatic writing rooms okay to discuss things? I mean, I heard about Walter Mosley with Star Trek recently. I don't know if you heard about that, but he was talking raw. and younger writers took offense, and he walked. He's like, if you can't have a safe space among writers, especially when discussing dramatic things, where the hell can you go? So I don't know if you've experienced that yet at all.
Yeah, I think that I don't belong even in a writer's room now, which is why I'm writing a novel.
Wow.
Unless it's a writer's room that I'm running, in which case I could still get into trouble by somebody who, says Dave Thomas should ensure that this writing room is a safe place for me, and my instinct would be, get the hell out of here. Who needs you? You know? But, we'll see what happens,
Well, thank God between you and Max, there clearly are no issues. I've been reading on his website that this project really goes several years back when you guys first met and even talked about this with Max. Is that correct?
It's not several years. It's really like about a year and a half.
Okay.
This book was, okay, I originally conceived this notion, or part of it, I should say, as a television pitch. And I took it out and pitched it to a couple places, and their eyes just kind of rolled back into their heads. And it was like, okay, this isn't going to go. So then I started writing it as a book. I thought, well, I'll write it as a book. I'll create my own IP and then back sell it into the TV that way. Well, I got 3 chapters done and then got distracted and did something else, and I have a lot of like partly done projects that are just stacked like that, waiting for me to get back to them. So then comes this bizarre introduction through SpongeBob, Tom Kenny, who says, hey, I have a friend who is a big fan of yours and he would love to be able to talk to you. I didn't know at that time that I'd actually met Max at the Second City 50th anniversary Sctv reunion show. And the reason I didn't remember him is because I met, I don't know, a couple of hundred people that night. Hi, how you doing? Hi, thank you for coming. So of course I didn't remember him. I don't remember anybody in an environment like that the minute I walk past them. It's just like, yeah, hi, what's your name? Oh, great. Gone, forget the name, forget everything. So I called Max at the urging of Tom Kenny. And so we chatted, and turned out that we had a lot in common. And he seemed like a really nice guy. And he said, so he finally got to, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I've just gone back to something I put aside for a while. I started writing a book. And he said, really? I said, yeah. And he said, what's it about? And I gave him a kind of one-liner on it. And he said, that sounds interesting. He said, how much have you got done? I said, about 3 chapters. And he said, well, I'd love to read it. And I said, well, you're welcome to read it. You're Max Allan Collins, accomplished novelist. You've written 100 novels. I haven't written any. So anyway, he read it and he called me back and he said, I love this. He said, I'll help you get a publisher. I'll help you get a book agent. But what I'd really rather do is write it with you. And well, that was a win-win for me because one, then I would have someone to push me into finishing it. And my natural inertia would be like, helped. And then I would be able to get the benefit of kind of going to novel writing school with an accomplished novelist that knew way more about this than I did. And I'm always up for a new challenge. So it was like, okay, let's do it. And then the COVID hit. And we had planned that I would go to Muscatine, Iowa, where he lives, for a little bit of time. And he would come out to LA for a little bit of time. And then we didn't do that. We just did the whole thing in the COVID environment over the phone and Zoom. And the MO that we worked out was we took the 3 chapters I had, kind of reworked them and added 2 more chapters. But the most interesting thing that we laid in, and I suggested this to Max, and I think he was a little reluctant at first. I said, why don't we add a mystery element to this? And then people will get why you're working with me. Not that I'm an accomplished sci-fi writer. You know what I mean? So this would be a mix of sci-fi and detective mystery. Anyway, we started talking about that and came up with this concept for the book that I thought was really novel and interesting, where we tell a sci-fi story and it would be interwoven with a detective mystery that was related to it, but that it wouldn't really connect and pay off until the end. So that's a challenge, and that was fun. And so we started doing that. And Max's MO, that he's done collaborations with other novelists. He said, you write the first draft of a chapter, and then I'll come in and do my pass. So essentially, we beat out the basic directions for the first 5 chapters. No, we wrote the first 5 chapters and beat out directions for the remaining 12 chapters. And then Max went out and got a deal for the book with Neotext. Yeah. And so that was a no-brainer for me. It was like, I didn't have to do anything. I'm just sitting at home and Max Allan Collins gets the book deal. And, you know, let's face it, it's hard to get a book deal these days because reading books is a dying art, or writing books is a dying art. Reading books is a dying pastime. And people are very visual and have just recently gone back to streaming television, to dramatic long forms. But there was a period there where they were only watching reality shows or texting or going on Instagram and things like that. So we worked it out that way. We would do we would discuss where the chapter would go, and then if I had a brainstorm in the middle of it, I would call him and go, you know what, I don't think we ought to go that way. I think we ought to go another way. And I want to write that. He was like, okay, write that. And because he was going to do his pass afterwards anyway. So what I learned from this experience was that working on an outline together when you're co-writing a novel with somebody is the easy part. The hard part is when you get down into the weeds of how you're going to say what you're going to say and coming to an agreement on that. Max and I butted heads a few times on the actual page. Just, no, we should do it like now, we should do it like this. But by then we had developed this pretty fast friendship. And so we were able to weather any kind of disagreements that we might have had and get through it. And ultimately, he's had to make less compromises than me because I'm a TV film writer. And I basically get noted up the yin yang. And, you know, I'm used to compromising and changing things and working in a writer's room and getting feedback from. He's used to doing his Max Allan Collins pass. So it was harder for him to compromise than it was for me. But we did it. And I got to say, it was a great experience. And I wanted to make, there's some quantum physics in this book. And that's the sci-fi portion of the book. And just in case somebody's listening to this and wants to get the gist of it. So a small-time thief from South Boston is on the run from a Vietnamese drug lord. He owes him $5,000. So he goes across the river to Cambridge, Massachusetts, buys a Harvard sweatshirt, and blends in with the crowds. He's a young guy and he could do that, trying to hide out, but he needs money. And he's a second story man by career choice. He's a B&E artist. So anyway, he needs money, so he breaks into a house, and it turns out to be the house of this physics professor who's running a quantum experiment in his basement. And our curious and scientifically stupid Jimmy Layton connects 2 cables together that connect a quantum computer to some quantum batteries and some other gizmos that are part of his experiments. And I'll explain in a minute why I call them gizmos. Anyway, those 2 cables that he connects become the steering wheel of a car, and Jimmy is transported to another version of his life in Chicago, over 1,000 miles away. And then he starts bouncing from place to place. And it was important. This is based on the many worlds interpretation that a physicist named Hugh Everett III came up with in the 50s. Essentially, his concept is this. For every binary choice in life, you come to an intersection, you go left or right. If you go left, that becomes your reality. That becomes the realized world that you live in. The right turn is the road not taken. In his theory, he said all the choices that would come from making that right choice exist in a universe alternate and equally valid to the universe where you make your choices. It was building on this thought experiment by a physicist named Erwin Schrödinger about a cat in a box. So you're nodding, you know what that is.
I'm hip, absolutely.
Okay, so anyway, it was important to me that the physics of this was that Jimmy doesn't go from being the small-time thief in Boston and then in another life becoming the, ruler of Argentina. It all has to be logical choices that a small-time thief from Boston, an orphan who grew up in orphanages, would have made. So in one of his lives, he's a soldier in Afghanistan. He could have enlisted and done that. And in another version of his life, he's a boxer. In another version of his life, instead of being a small-time B&E guy, he heads a robbery crew. In another version of his life, he's a priest, which is also, the old 1930s thing. I'm either going to become a Khan or I'm going to become a priest, So anyway, so he's hopping from version to version of his life. Now, in Hugh Everett III's theory, you don't hop because the only way to achieve the movement from this reality to the alternate reality is to commit what he called quantum suicide. So at that binary point in the road where you can go left or right, you shoot yourself in the head and then you can go right. You can take the road not taken. Only thing is that in terms of proving it scientifically, it's kind of difficult to prove. If you have to kill yourself to verify your theory, you're not going to be able to come back and verify it. So what we did was we had Jimmy, at the point that he connected these two cables, was shot in the head by somebody in the basement of this physicist in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So he's lying on the floor. He's not dead. It's a head wound, but he's in a coma. That's why he's bouncing from reality to reality instead of parking in one version of his life, because he's still alive.
Sure.
And, there's a point in every sci-fi where no matter how thoroughly you research, for example, time travel, and you account for the grandfather paradox and all the sort of possibilities that you can to make the time travel buffs happy and not gang up on you. And there's a point, however, in any sci-fi where it crosses from sci to fi. And in every time travel movie, there is ultimately that point where you open the door and there's the time machine. Well, that's what I call the MacGuffin. That's the thing that gets you into the fictional aspect of it and makes it fun, because the scientific aspect of it is interesting, but not really fun and certainly not dramatic. So in Goldman's basement, there's this box that he's been working. It's a particle accelerator, like the big one at CERN in Switzerland, but he's figured out a way to miniaturize it using plasma as the medium. So that's the MacGuffin. It's not scientifically accurate, but it is something they're thinking about. And the Hugh Everett III's theory is not scientifically proven. And there were a bunch of physicists who, the minute he came up with it, immediately attacked him. Max Planck, in particular, who said, that road not taken, that reality collapses when you make your left turn and you take the road taken. So that was known as the Copenhagen interpretation. So I know I'm dealing with something that is kind of a hot potato in the world of physics, but here's the interesting part. You know, the Big Bang Theory was originally conceived by some guy, a mathematician, French mathematician, in 1926. It was just a theory.
Okay.
There was no way to really prove it. It's just like the universe starts with a bang and blow out it. And so then 30 years later, the Hubble telescope gets launched and orbits Earth. And for the first time, we're able to see the galaxies and stars without the blur of the Earth's atmosphere, making it a messy observation. And what did they find? In a spectral analysis of those, they found a red shift, which indicated a movement away from us. All of a sudden, verifiable scientific proof for this French mathematician's crazy theory was on the table. Gotcha. And the Big Bang was now a scientific, hard-boiled reality that physicists had to deal with. Now, there's a similar thing going on now with the many worlds interpretation, because they've got the ability to view,
not at all.
The ability to view the microscopic world, the subatomic world, has increased. And physicists are they're firing electrons through slits and trying to determine whether they go left or right. And what did they find out? They found out the same electron went both left and right.
Wow.
That it actually exists into reality at once. In other words, the road taken is a reality and the road not taken is also a reality. And further, that these particles are in what they call quantum entanglement. They don't even need to be, they can be thousands of miles away from each other, but they are still connected and entangled.
Wow.
Well, what does this mean? I don't know. You know, I mean, Richard Feynman's a very famous physicist, and he said, anybody who says they understand quantum mechanics is either an idiot or a liar. And so I don't understand it, but I enjoy it as a fanciful world to play in for writing a novel. So anyway, that's my long-winded, drawn-out answer to your question.
Not at all, Dave. And I know that you have a background as a comic book fan, and I'll take a moment to talk about that, because I've heard you talk about it in other interviews. And as you know, I mean, I'm a big DC hero fan, and alternate universes go back at least to the 50s or 60s with a lot of those Justice League, Justice Society crossovers. And my audience is very hip on the alternate universe thing, but it is great to hear some real science behind those theories and everything. So that's terrific. And I will say, I'm only halfway through the book, but immediately it is inviting in terms of immediately establishing the settings, the character of Jimmy, everybody that he deals with. It's very appropriately atmospheric. You're in Boston, you're with this second story man, you get it. And it's great because, again, being a fan of both yours and Max's, it's great to see how well you guys are working together with this narrative. So well done.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Absolutely. Can I ask about, or let you tell about, as I understand it, you had a very extensive Superman comic book collection. Isn't that true?
That's right. When I was a kid, I collected Superman comics, and I bought 2 of every issue, one to keep and one to read, because my brother, who was just a pig with comics, would get milk and cereal and orange juice stains on them while he's reading them at breakfast. So I needed to protect them from him because I wanted to keep them. And so I bought every Superman, Superboy, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, Action Adventure, and World's Finest.
Wow.
2 of each from 1957 till about 1966, 67, something like that.
Sure.
When I was too old to be reading comic books anymore. And so I know the whole story of Kal-El and his arrival on Earth. I know the comic book theories of the Red Sun and why he has his powers. And the answers to a lot of questions in the science of Superman was always answered in the letters to the editor. where people would go, in issue number 67, you say this, and that's just crap. That would never fly. You know, and they always came back with pretty good answers. And they were always very candid and honest. And I thought that whoever was writing those letters was doing a wonderful job of doing the letter writing, you know. Does your show broadcast the visual part?
It can, absolutely. Do you want me to throw up a few images of some of the Superman stuff?
Hold on one sec. Just one
sure,
second.
Oh, go ahead, please. I can't wait to see what you're getting. There you go. Oh, I see it. I see. That's hilarious. I see a Superman logo right where you were picking something up. So that's fantastic. Yeah, I was going to plan on doing this. I was planning on doing this as video, Dave. I didn't realize, you know, so I'm glad you're willing to get up and show us something, please.
When I was a kid, I joined
Nice
Superman of America. And in it, you got your membership letter.
Wow.
You got your
great Joe Shuster emblem there on the letter, too.
Yeah. You got your membership to the Superman of America.
Nice. Beautiful.
And you got your official decoder.
Excellent.
And one other thing, and it wouldn't be Superman of America without this. You got your button.
Very nice.
Proudly wear.
Wow.
So that was the kit that I sent away for when I was, I don't know what year this was. Well, wait, maybe it says it on it. No, it doesn't.
Okay.
From
decoder, was it the way, like, I know Little Orphan Annie was Ovaltine? Was this for Kellogg? Wasn't Kellogg kind of the big Superman sponsor of the TV show, I think, back in the day?
I don't know exactly, but it's pretty complicated. This is the inside of the decoder. So if you wanted to decode the messages, you had to work, you know? And, but I think that these comics created a world that we grew up in that was science-based, but not science-limited. Meaning, what I mean by that is you didn't have the hard-boiled, hard-line, old-fashioned scientists that stood around and looked at time machines when ridiculous, preposterous, balderdash, insane. There was a parody of that, I think, in Mad Magazine. And, you know, I grew up with a real love for science. So when I would go to see the various Superman movies, when they went too far, I would get really pissed off, you know, and it would be just like, what are you doing here? You know, and I have my own favorites in the sort of movie world. For my money, the best all-round Superman ever is Henry Cavill.
Understood. Wow. Talk about it. Yeah.
And the reason for that is he doesn't bring the humor to Clark Kent that Christopher Reeve did. But you know what? He's great. He's buff. He's big. He's got that look. And there's one shot in Justice League where the Flash is trying to run past him. And there's a shot of Henry Cavill's face as Superman. And he's not even wearing his red. He's bare-shirted, bare-chested at this point. And he just turns and looks at him. And the Flash is moving faster than the human eye, but not faster than the Man of Steel's eye. And there's just a look of real scorn, like, you actually think you're faster than me, you idiot. And it was so perfectly portrayed. When I saw that moment, I thought, oh, I'm going to get this video and I'm going to replay that. And I actually freeze framed that particular shot. The look on the kid playing the Flash too is more like, uh-oh. It's like, uh-oh. He sees the look from Kal-El, you know?
Sure.
Anyway,
that's awesome. Have you been watching this first season of Superman and Lois, the CW show?
Yeah, I've seen some of them. Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, he's not bad, actually, as Superman. I've seen so many Lois Lanes now that I don't care about them anymore. You know what I mean?
Go
they're
on,
just,
yeah.
They're not important to me. And I see what they do. They got two kids. One's got powers and one doesn't. Ooh, what a dilemma for the kids where they got to help each other, you know? I mean, as a writer, I understand why they're doing that. But I also know that the reason they're doing that is because, you know, the CW is kid friendly and they want to make this a teen angst show. Yep. And it can't be about the Man of Steel and the stuff that he's dealing with, which is too bad because that's all I really care about.
So I'm assuming you were a Smallville fan then, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I liked Smallville. I thought it was pretty good. Yep.
Well, that's the thing. They already did that version. So, you know, it's time.
I even thought Lois and Clark had its moments.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you, man. Absolutely. So, for me, I wonder if you felt this way when they had Jack Larson guest star on the show.
Oh, yeah.
When they aged Jimmy, man, the meta behind that was just like, oh, that's so great that they figured out a way for Jack Larson in his older age to be Jimmy Olsen again. To me, it was fantastic.
I worked with a redheaded guy who looked exactly like Jimmy Olsen. He was a writer. And it was back in the early 90s when I had my own show on CBS. So we shot in a theater in Long Beach, and I came out and introduced people in the audience that were watching the show. And I said, and joining us tonight, a special shout out to Superman. And it's Clark Kent, this guy who I found an actor who looked exactly like him, you know, and he's wearing the glasses. He's going like this. No. And I said, come on, Clark, everybody knows you're Superman. Can we just see the S from? And this guy who looked like Jimmy Olsen was sitting right beside him, and he said, "Geez, Willikers, you're Superman," you know. And I said, "Everybody knows you're Superman," and he goes, "Well, they do now. Thanks a lot, Dave." You know, so, and I got special dispensation from Warner Brothers to use the costume and have it on a guy and put it in the show and call him Superman, because it was in one of those little windows with the franchise when they weren't really doing anything with it. And I was able to slip it through, you know.
That's fantastic, man. God, I don't know. Is that on YouTube? I
don't know. That got edited out because CBS got frightened by that opening because it was really bizarre and inventive. I think I have some video of that somewhere. And, but I had, excuse me, I was standing in front of a curtain at this theater in Long Beach. And the curtain opened and I had an 80-foot blue screen behind me, onto which I projected a California highway going into the distance. And I had a car, a Ford Mustang convertible, on the stage. And I turned to the audience and I go, "Some set, huh, folks?" And I get into the car and I start driving. And then it intercuts between me and the audience. And by this point, the audience is looking at the action through binoculars. And one woman says, "What is he doing now?" And he says, "He stopped his car." I think the old guy says, "He stopped his car and he's getting out." And I get out because there's an armadillo on the road, and I comment on it. And then these 3 Mexican banditos ride up on horseback, and they go, "Ah, senor, you're a long way from home." And I go, "Yeah, well, you know, I'm doing a television show. Much money you got on you?" I said, "Well, I nothing. I got, I don't know." And they got guns, you know, and I think I got $21. And it's like the guys in Treasure Sierra Madre.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely. Badges. Yeah.
And he looks at me and goes, $20. Him and his buddies start laughing. He goes, $20 is not going to do it, my friend. And I said, "Well, hey, you know what?" And I said, "Look down there." And I pointed over my shoulder, and down at the other end of the road, I had cut in a box that had the audience in it. I said, "There's a whole," I rat out my own audience. I said, "There's a whole group of people back there. They all got wallets and money, and you could get money from them." And they go, "What? Where?" Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Vámonos. Let's win. And they get on their horses and they start riding towards the box. And then I continue with the opening of the show, you know. But it was a bizarre opening, but CBS looked at it and went, no, you can't. So I had to do a different opening in front of a studio audience doing a monologue, which is like, okay, fine.
No, man, I hear you. I'm a big Ernie Kovacs fan. I'm sure he would have appreciated that.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, man. Hey, and I meant to ask because sadly we lost Mort Saul this week. And again,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Holy shit, I knew Mort.
94, man, good run. You know,
yeah, that's a good run.
But yeah, were you you know, comedy album? I'm assuming you were a comedy album guy as a kid and growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And my dad was an aficionado, and he had Jonathan Winters records, Andy Griffith stuff. This was before Andy did Andy of Mayberry, after No Time for Sergeants, and he was a stand-up, and he did monologues on the South. And we were living in Durham, North Carolina at that time. My dad was a philosophy professor, and he was it too. So Andy had bits like he talked about his family going down. They'd gone down to Florida, and my family had done this trip from Durham all the way down to Miami, and it was U.S. Route 1, and Andy Griffith called it. So we decided to go down to Florida, and we were taking number 1 Street, and we barely got on number 1 Street, and we see this sign that says free picnic tables 1 mile. And I said, well, let's stop and get us one. And he said, well, we kind of wish we had waited till we was on the way back to have picked it up, being it was made of concrete and all. And so there were jokes like this that I grew up with as a kid. Then there was the Jonathan Winters stuff, but also my dad was he was born in Wales. So he was a fan of British comedy. So the Peter Sellers records, the Goon Show records,
yes, sir,
things like that. I got exposed to all that. Tom Lehrer,
of course.
My dad was a huge fan of Tom Lehrer. Victor Borger was more hip back then, and we had some of his records. Spike Jones, of course, musical parodies of things.
Yes, sir.
So, and we did have later a Mort Saul thing, and of course the Kennedy family parody.
Von Meter.
Yeah, Von Meter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was the world I grew up in. And it was, you know, LPs, vinyl, you know, with a needle on it, and listening to stuff over and over. And the Peter Sellers he was an amazing voice technician. He could do voices that you just couldn't believe. And it was fun and that's where I learned how to do dialects. That and our trips, we would go to Great Britain every summer to visit relatives. So it was like, you know, we'd spend 2 or 3 weeks in Wales in this little town called Merthyr Tydfil that my father grew up in. So the Welsh dialect, boyo, is a certain kind. They elongate their words. Absolutely, then, my bach. They elongate their words, you know. And then his parents had moved to Birmingham, England. And there was the Birmingham dialect that, you know, you hang out there for a few. They lived on a place called Yottleton Road. It's near Coventry. And you don't say Coventry, Coventry. And then we would go to Scotland, where my mother's relatives were from. We'd be in Glasgow. Oh, it's great to see you. You're beautiful. You know, look at your children. They're so cute. Are you American now? You all must be rich. You know, so I learned all those dialects as a kid. And then when I'd hear the fine tuning of them on Sellers records, where he was able to do different regional Liverpudlian, Manchester, and, you know, Cockney and things like that dialects. Then I had it made when I got to Second City, because I could do, you know, I could do like 20 characters, and they all had different voices. because I'd kind of grown up with voice technicians. And, you know, you're in the South. I knew those dialects. And, you know, when you are a little kid, we moved there when I was 6.
Okay.
And the first time you ever hear, y'all come back and see us now here, the word here, y'all come back and see us now here, that would be on the end of words, on the end of sentences. And there was just, I loved the South. And it was really, it's got a sadness it had a real kind of a tragic side to it, because even back then in 1957, 58, 1960, they were still fighting the Civil War. And, you know, we had a postman in Durham that would tell the kids about battles the South had won in the Civil War, where they lost the war, but they had won specific battles. And it was important to them to have some victories. So it was a really, you know, interesting childhood.
Understood. And again, people like yourself and Mel Blanc and the voice technicians, God, man, that was just like, for me, it was cracking the code on various voices, like bloody Michael Caine. And listen to you do My Bloody Hand back in the SCTV days. I mean, truly, man, I learned so much watching you on SCTV, and I'm so glad you broke into the Scottish, because Angus Podgorny, one of my favorites, and I loved when he was doing the horoscopes and had his own descriptions of what the symbols all meant. And of course, you and Dave, or pardon me, you and Rick Moranis, yeah, when it was the rabbi against Angus and stuff.
Oh yeah.
You guys are throwing insults at each other.
And we were able to do stuff that you couldn't do today, you know.
100%.
And he, as he would play rabbi, but we weren't like nailing we weren't mean-spiritedly going after. No. But I was like, so we're going to do a thing here where we're going to take some of the things that people say about ethnic groups, and we're going to take some shots at them. So I turned to, so Karloff, hey, Jew, have you had enough holidays this year? And he goes, hoodlum. He called me hoodlum. Hoodlum, why don't you go paint some eggs and hide them for kids to find? Or why don't you go get some colored balls and hang them on a tree? So he's making fun of Christian traditions, and I was taking shots at him as being Jewish. And it was just good fun, you know?
100%, man. No, and literally, I'm so glad you said it. Have you had enough holidays this year? Exactly, just innocent shit, man. No, I'm so with you. And it is a shame that now, looking back, man, well, even Andrea Martin and Perini Scleroso, I'm sure she would get crap for that today.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's so, because we've lost the ability to laugh at ourselves. And that's really a shame. And we appreciate the music of the different dialects and the diversity. I'm with you. It's really a great shame. And really, all right, so obviously you had this chemistry with Rick.
Yeah.
And beyond, I mean, I love Doug McKenzie and Bob. Those are great. But truly, in the example that we're just talking about with Sunrise Semester, or you guys, Brinkley and Walter Cronkite and the various things, or, of course, played again, Bob, you doing Bob Hope and him doing Woody Allen. So were there, beyond Rick, because clearly you guys had that chemistry and you played it out, did you feel there were other cast members in particular that you really bounced off of well?
Oh, yeah. When I first started in Second City in SCTV, I did a lot of stuff with Catherine O'Hara because I'd done a lot of stuff with her on stage.
Sure.
And then I wrote, after Hal Ramis left, Joe and I took on the job of head writers, but Joe quit, and I ended up doing it alone. Joe just didn't have the administrative ability. He was a brilliant writer, but he didn't like the bullshit of, you know, breaking out the shows and putting the cards on the wall and organizing. He didn't like doing any of that stuff.
Okay.
But I wrote a lot with Joe, and we did a lot of interesting stuff in the second season. Then the third season of SCTV, as a half-hour show, Moranis comes, and I saw him. I talked to Andrew Alexander into hiring him because I'd met him at some party in Toronto, and we clicked instantly. We instantly clicked. And the night I met him, we got up on stage together and did something. I don't know why there was a stage at this party, but there was. And I think there was a band playing. And Rick and I got up. We were pretty fearless back then, in front of a room full of people, and just started bouncing off each other and doing stuff together. And then I said to Andrew Alexander, you got to hire this guy. This guy's amazing. He's really fast and really funny, you know. And when he came into Second City, man, we just started improvising stuff together. And it was just, I would say something, and he was already there. He would have an answer for me and be moving it in the next direction. And it was that played again, Bob, as an example. We improvised most of that into a cassette recorder.
Wow.
And then just transcribed it. We were literally so into Bob Hope and Woody Allen at that time that we were kind of channeling them. And yeah, we had a lot of fun. And then of course the Bob and Doug McKenzie thing was that was totally improvised. We never wrote a single word.
Wow.
Of any of the Bob and Doug stuff.
I'm aware of the whole needing a couple extra minutes for Canadian content, and that was the creation of Bob and Doug. Personally, watching the whole Bob and Doug phenomenon from originally on the TV show to the album, and then you guys touring cities. I'm in Chicago, and Steve Dahl and Gary Meyer was a show that you guys did a few times.
I remember the Steve Dahl show. Yeah.
Dave, I swear, you and Rick, again, improvisationally with them, that's some of the funniest radio that still is in my brain. And thankfully, Steve has the archive of the air checks and put them on his website so people can even hear some of the stuff you guys did. It was terrific. And yeah, just amazing, man.
Let me tell you a funny behind the scenes story that happened there in Chicago.
Please.
So we were there promoting the McKenzie brothers. And at that time, John Hurt, the actor who had played Elephant Man,
yes, sir,
was there promoting some Disney movie where a family escapes, I think, a Cold War country in a hot air balloon, something like that. Okay. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, one of the assistants, or it wasn't Steve Dahl, but it was one of his team.
Yeah.
Said, "Hey guys, you got to meet John Hurt. He's in the other studio. We're doing him on. We're interviewing him for he's promoting this movie he's doing." So they dragged John Hurt in, and he had no idea who we were. And he says, "Hey John, Dave Thomas, Rick Moranis, the McKenzie brothers, and he said they did a parody of Elephant Man on their TV show, and I had played the Elephant Man being chased around by tourists in the Sctv studios, and it just stopped the room when they said that we'd done a parody of Elephant Man, and Hurt goes, "Well, I suppose," he said, I know that John Merrick probably had a sense of humor, and God bless him, he may have that one now, but I, for one, don't see any comedy in that." Oh. And the guy from Steve Dahl's show just kind of looked at him and went, "Yeah," and he literally shoved him between me and Rick, put a toque on his head, and said, "Let's get a photo." And I don't have this photo, and I would kill to get a copy of it. There's a photo of a very uncomfortable John Hurt wedged between me and Rick wearing a toque. And oh man.
God, so I actually have a distant contact with Steve Dahl. So I used to see him all the time in the 90s because I worked in Chicago radio as well, and at the sports talk station. So that's amazing. I'm going to have to see if I can find out if he might have the picture.
I'll buy it. I'll pay you for it. If you get that picture. Oh,
that's awesome, man. Well,
I'll see what I can do.
I'll see what I can do. That's amazing. And again, this inspires more memories, and you'll forgive me. I hope I'm not taking too much of your time.
No, not at all.
I really appreciate it, because another great bit that you guys said, especially in the Network 90 days, 3CP1, the Soviet network.
Okay.
And
So that
and I
was
mean,
that was me. And I'll tell you
wow.
why. I'll tell you why I did that. I had written Spies Like Us with Dan Aykroyd in between the two shows. And I was fascinated with the Soviet Union during the Cold War.
Sure.
And before Danny and I started writing, we wrote at Universal in Bungalow 22. And Danny had a big steamer trunk full of books on Central Asia, Soviet mobile launch capabilities, Soviet missiles, things like Soviet satellite capability, American satellites. Danny said to me, David, we've got to read every one of these books before we put pen to paper. And I went, all right, let's do it. So I had done a ton of research on that, and it had been kind of bubbling in my head, looking for a place to vent it, to give it an outlet.
Sure.
And so I came up with this idea of a wraparound where the Soviets jammed the Sctv satellite and were sending Russian programming to us. Yes. And when I first sat down with the writers, they said, "Oh, how about a Russian version of the Tonight Show?" I said, no. It's got to come from the Soviet mentality. And it's got to be programming that is specifically unique to the Soviet Union. And I gave as my example this KGB propaganda show hosted by Felix Dvrinsky. He's the founder of the KGB, okay, the character I played. So the concept of it was what fits into Russia.
Yes.
And this played to the Soviets' big is best philosophy that they were using in the arms race with America. And America would have come up with a jet with 4 engines. The Soviets would launch one with 6 or 8 engines, and it was just always trying to top each other. And so this is a show where the sole purpose of it is to take cutouts of other countries with Velcro backings and put them on against the vastness of Mother Russia and mock them for how small they are. That's the show. And the other writers were kind of scratching their heads going, that's the show? Yeah. And then we started brainstorming, and we came up with this thing for John called Hey Jorge.
Yes.
And the premise of this show was that John was a mute. He was a deaf mute, but he was the spirit of enduring communist goodwill. And so he went around the country being welcomed wherever he came, because everyone loved Jorge. And everyone loved John Candy. So John Candy was the perfect guy to play this. And there would be a husband and wife arguing, and he would push them together and indicate that they should have sex. He'd go, oh, we should have sex. Oh, Jorge, thanks. So it was him solving really obvious problems for people. So this was the kind of programming we came up with. We came up with, Russian words are way longer than American words, do you speak Russian? Dvi ponimaya по-русски. There's like, it seems like extra syllables and words tagged on. So we came up with a thing called uposkrablenie, which was just Russian words that were just ridiculously long. And it was a lot of fun. And then there's the Sctv story of it, where I played a version of Red Adair, who was the oil derrick buster that would fix a oil well that was plugged.
Yeah, the John Wayne movie, the Hellfires. Excuse me. Yes, indeed. Absolutely.
And I get fired into space with Dr. Tongue and Woody Tobias Jr. And we have to separate the Soviet satellite from the Sctv satellite. And it ends with a failsafe parody of starting a nuclear war, and Joe doing his Henry Fonda, where he's like on the phone with the Russian premier. Mr. President, I'm so sorry. Well, here's what you'll hear. this, you'll hear this sound and then you won't hear anything after that. And it ends with, our show ends with a nuclear explosion and Vera Lynn singing, "We'll Meet Again."
Right, just like Strangelove, absolutely.
And so, who does a comedy show like that?
You guys do, man.
I was so proud of that show. And I know that probably a lot of American viewers that were scratching their heads going, what the hell is this? What the hell kind of show is this? You know, but I, for one, loved it.
Hey, man, my teenage group was thrilled, and we never knew what to expect every week. And even going back to the half-hour show and everything, I got to meet Harold Ramis because when Analyze This came out, yeah, he was a guest on our. We had a weekly sports talk show, but we'd have celebrities of all kinds come on. And Harold came on right after Analyze This had premiered, and I got to host the post taping dinner because the regular host of the show had to go do something else. And I pumped Harold for nothing but SCTV questions, especially of the early days. And he would tell me that even getting props in the half-hour days, you guys would go to like Woolworths and the dime stores to find, you know, crap to use in your show and everything.
We had no budget.
That's what he said.
But Harold was brilliant. He was a brilliant guy. He had been joke writer for Playboy magazine, so he had all this catalog of jokes that he could just pop in anywhere. And then he had an amazing reference level, really smart and well-read. And the minute I met him, I dogged his heels. It was just sort of like, I remember he was the head writer in the first season. And he said, so we each should be able to write one sketch a day. I'll write two. And it was just sort of like, he would, not in an aggressive or a nasty way, he would just drop these gauntlets that were just sort of like, you can write one, but I will write two because I'm capable of writing two. Well, I was very competitive and I was just like, you'll write two? I'll tell you what, sucker, I'll write two. And he called me in some interview we did his unabashed protege. And
wow,
it was
cool.
He told Andrew Alexander, he said, when I leave, you got to make this guy a head writer. But you know, anyway, we lost something when he left the show, but the rest of America gained something because he went on to do, you know, great stuff.
Absolutely. All those amazing movies, no question. Yeah. And again, just like you say, when Rick became part of the group, Martin Short, when he became part of the group and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, you guys were just amazing that way. You would take these new people and suddenly, you know, a whole bunch of new ideas would pop through.
There's a sketch on YouTube that Rick and I did that Marty is in.
Okay.
And it's a Deliverance parody.
Okay.
And Rick and I had these two pig characters that we played, Carl and Fred Scutts. And basically we just had pig noses. And the premise of these two characters is they were butchers and film editors, meaning they cut meat and head cheese and they cut film. They were cutters. And so we wanted to do a parody of Deliverance based on one thing, Ned Beatty's line where they rape him and they say, get down on all fours and squeal like a pig.
Sure.
Well, we already were pigs, so the joke would be, get down on all fours and squeal like a man. So that's not a good reason to write a sketch, but it was the reason we did that. And I'd always teased Marty that he looked, when Marty would come out of a pool or a shower and pull his hair back, I would say, you look like the banjo boy in Deliverance. Well, Marty will do anything for a laugh. And he could care less what he physically has to do or how he looks. He's brilliant and relentless that way. And I said to Marty, we're doing a parody of Deliverance. Will you play the banjo boy? And he said, sure. So if your listeners go on YouTube and look up SCTV Deliverance parody, you'll see this parody where Rick and I play the guys going downriver. Rick plays the Burt Reynolds part as a pig, and I play the Ned Beatty part as a pig. And we do one other thing in it that always kind of bothered me. It's a dramatic thing that in the real movie Deliverance, they make the decision not to shoot the hillbilly that runs away. And that's their problem. If they'd shot him, they never would have had any problems. They would have gone downriver and they would have picked up their cars and gone home. But they let him get away. So in our parody of Deliverance, Rick is actually, instead of using a bow and arrow the way Burt Reynolds did, he's using a piece of head cheese on a big elastic band between two trees that he pulls back, and he hits that hillbilly and kills him with the head cheese. And I say, as my character, we didn't want to make the same mistake that they made in Deliverance by letting the other hillbilly get away. So I don't know.
That's awesome, man.
We were doing stuff for ourselves. You know what I mean? Yeah, we were doing things that made us laugh.
But Dave, that's the great, I mean, that seems to be the secret as an observer of great comedy, that you guys trusted your own instincts, would come up with this off the wall stuff. The same goes with the Pythons and all the great improvisational sketch people and stuff. I mean, you could tell it's like, no, and they would be so off the wall. And obviously the Goons as well. I mean, that's great, man, that you guys did that. I know we've been waiting, you know, and I'm sure you're aware because I even saw it on your website. We've been waiting for years for the Scorsese Sctv documentary. Any word, any clue?
No, I don't know. He's still editing it. So
okay. Well, even hearing that's okay. I mean, because I know talking to other Netflix producers and stuff for my show, that sometimes things sit on the shelf, and really, especially during COVID, great strategy on their part, because it seems like, you know, they're like Santa's magic gift bag. It never gets empty. They're always ready with the next thing, you know, coming out. So have you watched, I'm guessing you might have watched Martin and Steve Martin's Only Murders in the Building. I wonder.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I love the show.
Pretty cool.
They did one show which was from the deaf guy's point of view with no audio.
Yep.
Okay. That was the only one that lost me. I was like, okay, I get it. But you know what? Enough is enough. I want to, you know, this is TV. It's sound and audio. And I just didn't like the perspective of being the deaf guy for the whole show. But hey, it's their show, and I love the show, and that didn't make me stop watching. I continued watching, so you know.
No, I hear you, man, and it's interesting to get a different point of view. I appreciated the inventiveness of it, but no, I can see that. You know, now that TV, because again, you've been doing network episodic TV, 20, you know, and I know you're not writing 20 episodes or whatever the run is on the big four. But obviously, the limited series, which is nothing new to British TV, but does that format, the way that TV is now with streaming and cable, does that at all intrigue you? As you said, I mean, I know you said earlier that maybe you're kind of done with group writing.
Well, I got a couple of things. My son came up with an idea. He's an actor. Okay. He had a recurring role in Better Call Saul, and he's done a bunch of other stuff, but he's writing now, and he came up with an idea that we're pitching right now. Cool. That I think it's a really good idea for a show. So I would work on that with him, but ultimately turn it over to him, you know, because I don't know. I mean, I'm not driven to perform anymore.
Interesting.
I don't really give a shit about acting.
All right.
And it's just, I understand why Rick got sick of it. And, you know, I did a movie. I got paid a lot of money to do a movie, and I did it. I candidly say I did it for money. And while I was doing that movie, I was writing a script with another writer. And so every time the door knocked, Mr. Thomas, we're ready for you on set. It was just like, God damn it. You know, because we'd have to stop the writing, which I was enjoying. and I had to go and stand there and yap, 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 do some other lines that I didn't think were any good or that I enjoyed doing. And so that was the point in acting where I realized, all right, it's got to be something really interesting or I'm just not going to do it anymore. And I got a call from Jim Valley, who was one of the producers on Arrested Development.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, we got a part for you. And I said, I don't know. He said, playing Charlize Theron's uncle. And I said, oh, you mean with her? He said, yeah, all your scenes are with her. He said, no, you got one with Jason Bateman. I said, well, I love him anyway. Okay. All right. How bad could that be? I'll do it. And so I did that, you know. But mostly I've said no to a lot of things these days. I got offered a film in Ireland, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad role, and it wasn't a bad deal. But I started thinking about flying over to Ireland wearing a mask for the whole flight, then staying in a hotel in some bed. I don't know that bed. I don't know what that bed's going to be like. And, you know, I'm an old man and I'm a cranky old man. And I just thought, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to do it. And I passed. And the producer who had been courting me said, well, why are you passing? And I said, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I said, I'm 72 years old. The idea of being on a plane all that distance wearing a mask and then being in some hotel in a bed I don't even know, and then being on set or in a trailer or in a dressing room that you find for me in a pub. Oh, we got a nice place for you, Dave. It's in a pub. It's not like a trailer. You know, actually, I should be doing an Irish accent. But anyway, I just thought, I said, no, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. So my son would like me to do something with him where we could act together. And there's the romantic part of me says, sure, I would like to do that. Except that I know somewhere early in the first day, I would regret it. And then pretty soon, I would start to become a difficult performer. You know what I mean?
I do. I understand.
And you don't mean to be difficult, but I totally understand it when actors who've done hundreds of movies and then they get called to the set and then they just stand there for like half an hour while they fuck around. And it's just like, hey, give me a break, you know, call me when you need me. And they walk off and say, I'm not coming back on unless you make a promise to call me. And everyone go, oh, that guy's full of himself, you know. And it's not that at all. It's just that it's lost the luster and the repetitiveness and the boring and the bad. And, you know, you don't want to be called to set 6 hours before you shoot.
Sure.
So you're just sitting around there like, oh, God, you know. And it's never as comfortable on set as it is in your hotel room. And I'll top that. It's never as comfortable in the hotel room as it is at home, which begs the question, why even take the job and go to a hotel room? So, you know, there's a lot of reasons, and not everyone would understand it. And some people would say, oh, you know, you're lucky to have such problems. And that's true. I freely admit that. And I've been ridiculously lucky in my career. And I don't for a second ever think that, oh, I deserved this or I should have got more. Or I'm delighted with everything that I ever got and surprised that I ever got it because I did way more than I ever thought I would when I started out. But that's why I'm not acting much anymore. But writing, I enjoy writing, as you know from working with Max.
Sure.
And I especially like puzzles. And some of these Netflix streaming shows that are not episodic, but that, you know, they're more like little soap operas and they kind of bleed into one another.
Yes.
You know, so I've had a good time watching those, and I've come up with a couple of ideas for those shows that I'm trying to pitch right now, one with my son. And I think I would do that as a writer. As an actor, probably not, but, you know, certainly as a writer.
Understood.
And then a lot of people say, hey, wouldn't you like to direct an episode? And I go, no, not at all. I mean, then I have to be on set before everybody. I got to have my shot list. I've directed, and I know I am not a director. You know, somebody like Steven Spielberg is a brilliant editor. He's a cutter. And somebody like Ridley Scott is able to create landscapes on screen that are just like awe-inspiring. They're like, you know, Rembrandts or, you know.
Yeah.
And that's not me. The best I could ever offer as a director is in a comedy, I'd be able to look at whether the performances are funny and maybe make some suggestions of how to make it funny. But all the things that I've ever directed, I lean heavily on the DP and the AD, and basically just, I'll say to the DP, let's put it on its feet. So we'll run it. Then we'll let the actors go and go to makeup or whatever they got to do. And then I'll talk to the DP about how we're going to do it. You know, what's the master angle? So where can you get the most? And we'll do that master once or twice. And then we'll come around and do some coverage, and
sure,
he can basically do some spotlighting and keys. And, you know, I did a movie as an actor with Dave Foley and Jason. Oh God, he drives racing cars. Is his name?
Geez. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I've just gone blank on his name. I'm having a senior moment.
No worries, man.
But anyway, the director in this was an idiot, and I hope he's listening, because he would shoot 27 masters. And it's just like, you're never going to use that except a way in or a way out or somewhere in the middle if you're in trouble and you can't get from cut to cut, you know. And so we were shooting a scene. What's this guy's name? It's driving me crazy.
Can you tell me other things he did? Maybe because I'm kind of a trivia nerd.
Yeah, I think he did 90210. Priestley.
Oh, sure, Jason Priestley, of course.
So Priestley, I love him. He's like really, he's a fun guy to do. And then
cool.
So it's me, Dave Foley, Jason Priestley, and this Scottish actor named Ewan Brennan, who's in Trainspotting.
Okay.
And he had a really thick Scottish accent. And so this director who was doing 27 takes of Master had one scene where we were exiting a bar. And we shot this in Toronto, and they were using a real bar that was open on Bay Street. And so Jason said, why don't we have a drink between each take? Because this son of a bitch is going to make us do a lot of takes. And then he upped the game to Boilermakers. Do you know what those are?
Absolutely. Beer and a shot. Yeah.
Okay, so then we upped it to Boilermakers. By the time we got to, I don't know, the 10th take or 11th take, we were all so shit-faced that we couldn't even stand. And Ewan Brennan, who goes, you got very thick, broad Scottish dialect like that. You can hardly figure out what the hell he's saying. You know, when he got drunk, he got more unintelligible.
Sure.
But it was a fun scene to do. But it's like, that's my theory of directing, is that there was a thing that came out, I think Woody Allen's mainly responsible, where he directed his own movies. Then a lot of actors are going, I want to direct. And people were saying they wanted to direct, who really had no right to direct at all, because they weren't specifically directors. They didn't know how to compose shots like Ridley Scott. They didn't know how to cut like Spielberg, you know. So it became a currency that you could play, and I did. It was offered me, Dave, would you like to direct a movie? You know, Rick Moranis and I got offered, or were told actually, they fired the director in Strange Brew, and MGM said, we want you guys to co-direct it. And Rick nearly quit at that point.
Wow.
Because he didn't want to co-direct it.
Sure.
And I stupidly did, because I thought, yeah, well, let's do this. And anyway, so no, I don't want to be a director. Not
Fair
that you
enough.
even asked that.
No, but Dave, all that was gold. Don't kid yourself, man. And I did want to ask, especially working with your son, as a final question, because you've been incredible with your time. I thank you so much. Would you ever want to, and especially with the Bob and Doug album, because I love the Python albums, and I know a lot of them were variations of their TV sketches and stuff, but would audio, and again, because then you could lean into your character voices and stuff, would anything like that intrigue you to do from a comedic standpoint?
Well, I won't, I'll say never say never.
Sure.
But I think Rick would be a difficult get for that.
Understood.
I don't think he wants to do that. And where he would stall is he would say, well, what are we going to do? And, you know, he rightly says he got offered a part in the new Ghostbusters. And he didn't want to do it, but the director talked to him. I think it was Ivan Reitman's son who's directing.
Yes,
it.
Jason, yeah.
So he gets him right to the point where Rick tries on the costume and the glasses, and Rick looked at himself and he said, I'm 65. I could do this when I was in my 20s, but I'm sorry, I can't do this now.
Wow.
And
wow.
I understood that, you know?
Sure.
So it's like Bob and Doug, we did we kind of reprised the characters for benefit for my brother's son who got in a snowmobile accident and he became a paraplegic. And so we were trying to raise some money for him because he needed money. And a lot of my friends jumped on, and Rick came back and said he'd do the Mackenzies with me. So that was a reunion. But I got to say, it was difficult. It was like starting an old lawnmower. Difficult. It was just hard to get the juice that we had. And when we did it, we had the juice and we improvised it.
Sure,
but
sure.
You know, the question is, do we have that juice now? And I don't know the answer to that question. So never say never, as I said at the beginning of this answer. But I think it's difficult.
Well, I would love to see you just even solo or with your son possibly explore characters again. But I hear what you're saying. And again, yeah. I'm glad that you're collaborating with Max writing and The Many Lives of Jimmy Layton, man. Again, I'm halfway through it. I'm really enjoying it. I'm talking to Max next week, so I'll have finished the book then. So I'll have the full book report for him.
Well, then you'll see how we dovetail the two. You know how we alternate between the two cops investigating and then Jimmy's alternate realities?
Yes, sir.
You'll see at the end how we bring them together. And I hope you find that satisfying, because I was pretty pleased with that myself.
I like I said, I've enjoyed what I've read so far, Dave, and I really this collaboration was so exciting to hear about, and I can attest for the audience that I don't believe they'll be disappointed. The book sucks you right in, and that's great. I haven't reached the ending. I don't know if this is the beginning of a series or if it's a finite story, as far as you're concerned.
As far as I'm concerned, never say never. That's my answer to everything these days.
I respect that. Absolutely. Well, the book is out now. People can order it right now. They can get it
on Amazon.
Right? Yeah, at Amazon.
It's exclusive on Amazon now.
Oh, so it is a digital exclusive currently.
No, yeah, you get a hardback. You can get a paperback cover.
Okay, very good.
For the shockingly low price of $8.99. Come on, baby.
Hey, truly, man, I went for the Kindle at $3.99, but I'm not complaining, man. No, that's great, man. The Many Lives of Jimmy Layden, co-written by Max Allan Collins and our guest today, Dave Thomas. Dave, as I told you, man, longtime fan, and I think you can tell from my questions. It's so great to have the opportunity to reminisce with you and continued success. Truly, well done at all the diverse things that you have done and likely will do. So keep it up, man. We're all rooting for you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be on your show.